Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our panel. We really appreciate that you're here. Just double checking, this is the Illustrating Tabletop Games panel. If you're not meant to be here, you can still hang out with us. It's fine.
Defenestrating Tabletop Games is next door.
Right. I'm Jennifer Closson. I'm the creative director for Greater Than Games. And then I'll let these two fine gentlemen introduce themselves.
I'm Adam Rebottaro. I am the Lord of Illustration for Greater Than Games, which is functionally art director. It's just a made-up title I gave myself. I did all the art.
That's what happens when you make your own business.
For the Sentinel Comics lines of games, and recently for homebrewers as well.
Yeah, characters and homebrewers. Yep.
And hi guys, I'm Lucas Durham. I'm a freelance illustrator. I've been working with Greater Than for, 4 years now?
Yeah.
A little while now.
Yeah, yeah. I've primarily illustrated Spirit Island, and I've worked a little bit on Fate of the Elder Gods as well. Other companies I've worked with is Fantasy Flight Games, Catalyst Labs. I am currently working with the Federal Mint as well, and I am working with a lot of different other companies that are still under wraps. So, yeah.
Exciting things.
Oh, I can't talk about it right now. But yeah.
So, first place, I think that'd be a great place to start. Then we'll just work our way back down. So, Lucas, you've got a pretty wide range as far as what companies you've worked for, the type of work you've done, contract, full-time, everything. So, how did you get started in the industry and kind of work your way through there?
Sure. I actually started at Gen Con. Basically, all of you in here are doing my first steps, so you're already on your way. So I came here like the first year I graduated college, and basically kind of walked my portfolio around, had a physical book, and kind of talked to a couple of people in the artist alley, got to know some people there, but didn't really get out there too much. The Saturday of my first con, a friend approached me and she's like, "Hey, you brought your portfolio today, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Great, because you've got a meeting with Fantasy Flight in 5 minutes." So she signed up behind my back and showed up for the interview. The art director at the time, Zoe Robinson, looked at my stuff, said, "Hey, you got some pretty cool tech drawings. I'm going to take a shot with you, and you'll be hearing from me." And so 6 months later, I started working with her on Netrunner, and basically have just kind of grown my portfolio and my catalog of clientele since then. And that's kind of what I love about board games, is so much of it, because it's out there, so much of it is word of mouth and recommendations from art directors and other artists, because we are such a small community here. So, yeah.
Yes, go for it, Adam.
So I got started in one of the least traditional ways that you possibly can, and that is I started my own company with my two business partners, and drew 300 pieces of art in 3 months to get a game out that was not quite ready. and self-employed from that, basically. And my art was not ready for prime time at that point. I just did a whole bunch of it over the subsequent 5 years to get where I'm at now. So
I'm a little bit also unconventional as far as how I got into the gaming industry itself. I started as an art student. I have a degree in graphic design, and I went from there, and I actually kind of industry hopped a little bit. Before I came into the gaming industry, I was actually working in home decor, so quite a different industry, but I was doing a lot of the back end. I was working with factories, doing the layout and the design, but also the creation process of the pieces themselves. How do they fit? How does this work? That kind of a thing, which then allowed me to go into my passion, which at the time was a hobby and now is a full-time job. Yay! And that's how I kind of broke into this side of the industry, where I could take not only my art background, but also my production and manufacturing background to be able to lay out games, but also work with the artists, work with the factories, do the project management, kind of bring everything together. So a little more unconventional, but still fun. So what we'll do is we'll just do kind of a brief overview of just some tips that over the years we've kind of learned as we've been working through things, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, and we'll go from there. So first thing that I thought would be really good to talk about, obviously networking, very important, and the best part of that is your takeaways or your giveaways after you've had a meeting. Business cards. And I know it sounds really like, I need a business card, right? But the standard business card, so like I carry this around the show with me everywhere I go, and I keep it at home with me, and it's got slots in it for all my business cards, right? So as an artist, trying to get a gig, trying to meet people, having art on one side and your contact info on the other is the best thing you can do, and keep it standard business card sized.
Yeah, I don't mind like maybe a little die cut if you have something special like that, but oversized business cards are the bane of my existence when trying to sort through artists.
Right.
Later.
So like right now I've got these, which are non-standard, and I can't do anything with it. So when I'm walking around, it's gonna fall out. I might lose your information, that kind of stuff. So please, please, please keep your business cards to a standard size. Feel free, make them thick, make them die cut, foil, emboss, whatever you can do to make it unique and stand out. That is still really good. But a lot of people try to do this, but it's such a cool thing and it makes me really unique. But then like, I can't keep it around and it's in a pocket somewhere instead of in where I need it when I'm trying to find you as an artist later. I don't know if you've had kind of similar experiences.
See, that it's really funny because like I feel like I might be causing the bane of their existence. 'Cause, like I've been telling people to try different shapes and stuff, but it is important that it is directed towards the proper art director, because that's part of it too. Is you are looking for just a standard artist, like quick something that you're going to keep in a business card file. Versus I've been talking a little bit more about targeted marketing, where I've been considering telling people like who are going for WotC or somebody who is much more like card oriented, to possibly come up with something like, say, a token card that is similar to the Magic tokens, so that it shows your art, but at the same time is something that they can use. But again, that's part of it is that they would be using it.
You've got a layer of usefulness to it.
And they could see how your art could be implemented in their stuff. Versus, especially the greater than games products that you have cards, but you have the art on so many other different products and stuff. It's easier for you to use the more business card setup. So for this panel, because it's people that are just trying to break in, I'd say at least you have to have at least a default like business card, standard size. But if you're trying to target a very specific company, my bonus step would be try to figure out how you can market yourself in a targeted way that would be implementing more of something that they want to see.
And you can, if you take a walk through Artist Alley, you can actually see a good number of people that do both, that have their stack of regular business cards for the people that, the business-oriented people that want to just have it in there, and then they have a stack of postcards next to it or something like that for someone who wants something bigger. But like having that default is really important. And something that I just thought of also that is crazy important is legibility. There are so many times that I get a card and I go, wow, this art's really nice. I want to look this artist up later, and I look at the back and it's their signature or something, and it's completely illegible. And I go, well, I guess this person's not getting work because I don't know who they are.
And that's actually a great thing to mention too, is like keep your fonts clean, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Like I've seen I've done some alumni portfolio reviews, and anytime I see something like Bleeding Cowboy, it's the worst. Just Helvetica is a great like standard font. I use Futura. Like keep to the very basic default fonts as much as you can. Or if you are into typography, keep something keep something very clean, because you want them to find you. That's the thing that you want to make sure they take away is like, how do I contact this person when I'm digging through my bag prepping for like the next con, and now I found the business card again.
So to another point that we were just talking about, portfolios. So obviously every artist needs a portfolio. And when I say that, like, have your physical portfolio when you go into those meetings, but also your online portfolio. Your online presence is very important. Please, in my opinion, have an actual online portfolio. Please don't send me to your Tumblr. Please don't send me to your Instagram. Have a website that is dedicated to your art and what you want me to see to remember you when I'm trying to think of you for a project or things like that. There are a ton of free Squarespace, Wix, Behance, ArtStation, DeviantArt. Yeah. There are a ton of options out there to get those free websites that will help you build that portfolio. I'm not asking you to be coders, because that's not what I want to do with my time. I'm sure there are parts of you that don't want to either. But make sure that you've got a direct website that we can go to look for your art. Another important thing is tailoring, but also editing your portfolio, which is something you were kind of starting to talk about there. So,
well, just if you don't mind me jumping on bandwagon. I had some great tip early on by John Shindahedi, who was the head art director for Magic the Gathering back in the day. He would say, if you're going to do online portfolio, there used to be a push to do everything. Make sure it's on DeviantArt, make sure it's on ArtStation and everything. His tip was have a little bit everywhere, but just focus on 3 platforms that you do everything on. Back in the day, it was a blog, or now you could do like a YouTube channel or something. It's like something that is out, sort of giving people a chance to like get to know you as a person. But like for an online portfolio, make sure at least you have like a personal page, an ArtStation, and like maybe a Behance, or like maybe I know some art directors that go through DeviantArt, but make sure you focus on 3, because sometimes it's tempting to just put your stuff everywhere. But the problem with that is like sometimes you forget where you've placed it. Yeah. So like I know there's some Lucas Durham art pages out there that hasn't been updated since like 2012.
Right. Yeah, I have DeviantArt from probably 2009.
Right.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want is someone pulling your art from 5-6 years ago, when now you're so much better.
Yeah.
Well, and also to that point, don't make me try to find your email address.
Yeah.
There's so many times that I'll run across a page and go like, wow, this art's great. The portfolio is organized nicely. Let me contact this person, and then there's nothing. Or it just says their name at the top, and their name is John Smith. And so like I can't Google John Smith and figure out where the email is, John Smith artist.
A contact me page, about me page, something on there that give us a little bit of your resume if you want to throw it on there, or just a paragraph about who you are, what kind of art styles you do, and
if you don't want to give out your email, a lot of them have contact forms.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't mind giving out my email, but a lot of people don't feel good about that. So.
And I've done that. I've filled out different forms for talking to people about contracting art or things like that, and I've gone through their form, and that's fine, just as long as I can get to it.
Yeah. Or a lot of like Squarespace and some of the more templatable like Wix, they do allow you the option of just having an email specifically for that business too. So that's another option. And you actually, I'm sorry, just to jump back in, like
No, you're good.
the targeting portfolios.
Yeah. How do you pick, edit, tailor?
What's great is so many of those sites you can have like ghost. I don't know the if this is the right term, but like ghosted sites where you can have a direct link that only people that you send the link out to can find it. So that's a great way if you want to do like a targeted portfolio, because there's art that I'd be sending to Jen and Adam that I wouldn't be sending to, say, like WotC or like Fantasy Flight. Like, I'm sure you guys, I mean, I know you like Star Wars, but you know, Darth Vader isn't going to help you.
Right.
with Spirit
90%
Island
of my
cards or
games,
something.
I'm not looking for hyper-realistic magic style art.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something a little bit more stylized in one way or another.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to see from submissions also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be really tough too, like trying to figure out, well, I really like all of these pieces, you know, how do I pick which ones are going to go in there? Don't be afraid to ask a fellow artist. Don't be afraid to go out into the community and kind of talk to them like, I'm really debating between these two pieces, which one do you think is stronger? Because it sometimes feels like, what if I get all of this in there, it'll be great. But you have to remember that the person looking at it has limited time and they're trying to see the best of what you have. And then if they want to see something else, they'll contact you and be like, hey, this was really cool. Do you maybe have something that's kind of like this? And then that's your chance to be like, yeah, I've got 10 more examples if you'll let me send them your way.
If I can ask you guys a question, then.
Sure.
How, because I've heard varying things from different art directors. When you're looking for new talent, how many do you like to see, like, minimum to
How
like
many
maximum?
pieces?
Because like I know some people will throw out 50 images sometimes and stuff, and I know that can be laborious, and
Well,
you only have a few minutes, right?
To me, the more the better, but put the better ones at the top.
Right.
I don't mind. I think a minimum of bare minimum of 5.
Okay.
Like that, I want to see a handful of things. There are a lot of portfolios that I go to that it's like it'll have the tabs at the top and it'll go illustration work, animation work, comic pages, etc. or whatever, and each one will have one example. But I want to see probably at least 5 in each of those.
Yeah.
I'm a scroller, and if you have a lot of good work up on there and I get absorbed in it and I keep going through it, then I'm gonna go like, you know, I love looking at this person's art,
Yeah.
so like let's get them in here.
Yeah. I'm probably a 5. Okay, so if we're talking about like an online portfolio or things like that, I'm probably about a like 5 to 10 kind of thing on your online portfolio. I'm totally game for you breaking it up and being like, these are concept arts that I did for this thing, or
That's pretty
these
useful.
are character arts versus, you know, full landscape arts or whatever, because then I can go directly where I want to go. But like, so Spirit Island, the RPG, things like that, when I'm trying to contract out 12 different artists for a project, I don't have time to scroll for an hour per artist as much as I want to. So having those like 5 to 10, like, these really show, you know, what I can do, and then I'm very much the kind of person that will follow up and be like, hey, I really liked this piece, and this piece because of these reasons. Do you have anything else that you think you'd like to show me for these, or, you know, and we'll kind of go from there, and I'll reach out to you for more art. But that's where, you know, we're a little bit different, where I'm trying to do mass amounts of people. So
Yeah, and I think that that's something I do want to say about our approach is that I'm very hyper focused on whatever game's in front of me, and Jen is project manager on a number of things at a time. So she is thinking about a game that she's not even going to start until a year from now when she's looking at artists, and so like she's collecting a lot more information. So I'm a lot more focused on. And like, frankly, I don't go looking for artists that much anymore. I usually stumble upon them and then send them her way, and I go like, "Hey, hire this person, please."
yeah, I get Slack messages
Yeah.
like, "But did you see this person? They're
Right.
really good."
Yeah, sorry, here's another artist.
I'm like, dang it, stop it.
And actually, just something else I want to just make a note, because like I'm currently working at a game studio in Chicago, and we are currently hiring a bunch of people. And one of the things my producer was freaking out about the end of this week whatever you're sending people or you have out there, make sure it can be it's tasteful in a work environment.
Yes.
We have been running into a lot of issues with people on ArtStation, putting in nude studies and stuff, and sometimes those studies aren't always coming from the most like tactful places. So, be good about curating what you're sending to.
And not just nudity, graphic violence also is another thing that comes up a lot.
Yeah. And, basically just, keep in mind, like, okay, will this person get in trouble if HR is walking by?
PG-13.
Yeah.
Adam and I have had this conversation a lot where, like, he'll be looking for reference art or something, and it's just like, if somebody saw my search right now,
oh my God,
this would be terrible.
But also,
and
like...
it's because you're like, no, not that, I don't want that.
Right. but I mean, that also goes back into tailoring it, too.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously, for what we're producing here, it's not proper. But there are other... If that is something that you want to approach, there are... venues that's appropriate for.
Yeah, I would say
you got to do a targeted portfolio for that.
Right. Yeah, I would say keep your public portfolio PG-13. Yeah. And then like if someone's like, well, I'm looking for this erotically charged role-playing book art, you can have a private one for that.
Right.
That you can then send them if they ask that specifically.
And that's where they will come back to you and be like, hey, you're really good at the human form. These pictures look really great. We're looking for someone who can do this kind of study or this kind of tasteful nude or whatever, and then you can share some of those pictures with them. Yeah. So, and that kind of comes...
but no one wants that by accident.
Yeah, that's not what I want to see when I open my email. But that brings up another good point as far as when you are contacting an art director or creative director and doing kind of that quote-unquote cold call type of contacting someone, please use their email. I know that we're all in this like digitally connected world of Facebook and Twitter and all these kinds of things, but like you are presenting yourself as a business, and that's the big thing to remember. You're a sole entity and you're an artist, but you are a business, and you want to present yourself in the most professional way possible, which means getting a hold of their email and contacting them that way, instead of being like, here's a friend request on Facebook, will you be my friend? Now will you look at my portfolio? That kind of a thing, because there is a fine line there between the professional level, and that is one thing that I've seen happen more and more and more, is getting those contacts in that regard, because also like your chances of me friend requesting you versus your chances of me opening your art portfolio email are vastly different. So you're really undercutting yourself by doing that.
I don't like feeling cornered. And a lot of the time on Facebook, that's how it feels. You'll get a friend request, and I'm kind of bad about just going like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't look at Facebook that much, so I go in there and I have 1,000 notifications. I just click, yeah, accept the friend request. I don't care. And then I'm getting personal messages in the Facebook Messenger from someone saying like, hey, look at my art. Have you looked at my art yet? Looked at my and that feels invasive. Part of that's my fault. I shouldn't just
don't be so popular.
Right. Well, I shouldn't just accept every friend request I get. But some people have their messages open to the public also.
And that may change. Like as your relationship changes and you work together more and more and more, you can open up those avenues of, I've got Facebook Messenger. I did this to Lucas the other day because I have Facebook Messenger and I had it on my phone and I'm at a show. And I'm like, okay, this is the easiest way I can get in contact with him. But we have established that line of communication.
We've been working together for years.
Right. When it's your initial reaching out, keep it as professional as possible. Do the, Misters and Mrs. and hey, and here's my portfolio. I have this much experience, like that kind of a thing. Anything want to add? We get that one.
Don't make it hard for me to get to your portfolio. Don't make me log into anything.
Yeah.
Preferably don't make me download anything and expand it on my computer, because then I have a desktop full of files. Make things as easy on the art director as you possibly can, because they're going to respond well to that.
Yeah. And actually, another quick tip I've been told is like off of that is make your art easy to steal for an art director. Like small files, name on it, like name incorporated into the file if you can do that. because you will get a lot of art directors that are trying to pull your artwork from your website and possibly sharing it around the office. So I don't know if Lightbox is a thing anymore, but that was
The Expo.
huh?
The Lightbox Expo.
Like Wix on, is that what it is? Yeah. But but there were gallery pages where you just could not pull it down.
Oh, yeah.
And when you have a creative team trying to decide on people, sometimes it's nice to just shoot it over. And
Yeah, I paste images in Slack all the time.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people tend to ask right away, how do I keep my stuff from being stolen? And the thing is we live in a meme culture. You want your stuff to be shared. The trick is to make sure you're credited when it's getting shared.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a really good point.
It's so much better from our perspective of working together. If I go, oh, here's this link to this person's Twitter that I found, and I really like their work. I can either go, I really like the one where there's the barbarian and he's standing on a field, and I like that one. Or I can go, here's the image that I like, and there's going to be a visceral response to that instead of me trying to describe a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
That's a cliche for a reason.
So another point now, we've kind of talked about how to get in touch with people and some of those basics. So once you've gotten in touch with someone, you're getting ready to roll on a project. First step, quoting, pricing. So Lucas, you've come from a lot of different backgrounds where you've been full-time, you've been contract, you've been freelance, you've been all over the board.
Yeah.
How do you decide what is a good pricing structure? Do I do per hour? Do I do per piece, per project? How do you go through? What's your process for figuring that out?
It varies a lot. Depends on a lot of different things. The best advice I've ever been given is you want whoever is hiring you to hear what the price is that you want and go, yeah, okay, let's do this. You want them to have that lurch of this might be a little out of my price range or what I want for the budget, but let's do this because I want you to work on this project specifically.
Yeah. 2% too high.
Yeah. And a lot of times doing that also allows you to kind of bargain or barter back and forth because any client worth working for is going to be open about talking rates with you. Things that artists need to keep in mind when deciding on rates, and a lot of it is personal process and what you feel comfortable with, but you need to think about how much time this is going to take you, how much effort it's going to take you, and also how much from a copyright standpoint you are selling. A lot of people do not take into account that you are selling. In America, you sell or you own the copyright to your image by the moment you consider it completed work. So any company you're working for, greater than, I am selling them the right to use that image, even if it's their intellectual property. I'm creating that spirit for Spirit Island, that image of it, and I am selling them the work or the right to print that and use that in their promotional materials and everything else. And that's I think something that a lot of people do not take into account when they're coming up with their rates. When you're starting off, it might be you might not be able to ask for a lot for that. But as you start progressing in your career, you can charge more and more and more because you are an established name at that point, and that can be something you consider as you grow.
There's also there's a general negotiating tactic that always holds true. Yep. That ask for 20% more than you expect to get. And that I've done that at numerous jobs in the past that aren't art, and it's always worked for me.
Yeah.
And
then also there are resources out there too, like the Illustrator Handbook is a great place to at least get a ballpark. I have gone up way above the rate. I have gone below the rate too. Donato Giannicola, who is an amazing artist, has done some amazing stuff for Magic. When he started his career, he did a couple of paintings that were he was only getting about $2 an hour for the painting, and like it helped him get established so that he can now charge $1,000, $2,000 per painting plus licensing for that. So like see what is comfortable for you. It all depends on your your personal situation. If you have a day job, it's great that allows you some flexibility with your ability to negotiate. There were years that I was doing full-time freelance where the company knew that they could kind of negotiate because it a little bit in their favor because of that. But it's a lot of trial and error. You're gonna feel screwed every once in a while. It happens, but you'll learn from that. So.
I mean, you just opened yourself up to commissions recently. What kind of experiences did you have?
So I've taken commissions on and off over the years, and there's a couple things for me. I'm very familiar with, at this point, how long it takes me to do an image, and it's directly dependent on how many characters are in that image. And so I know that that's the deciding factor of what takes me time. So I came up with a price of this is how much I charge per character. Unless they have something really complicated like chains, then we got to discuss that. If you're spawn, you got chains all over you. It's gonna take me forever.
So lots of tech.
Yeah.
That's your favorite thing to draw.
Yeah, it's a tech. Yeah, armor, wings. It's like my favorite. But like even within that, I went okay. I can bust out an isolated character that I don't have to worry about competing light sources or anything like active shade. If it's just for like an RPG character, if it's just your OC or something, I can knock that out real quick. I can get away with doing these for $50, and like that, I feel like is a good price point for selling something like that. Anytime you can create like a standardized product in terms of commissions, I think that is beneficial.
Yeah, I mean those are really good guidelines to follow. So if you do character arts, being able to give me a price for an isolate, so something without a background, giving me something that's just a bust, that's just top part of a character, because I'm doing it on a card. I don't care what their feet look like, it's going to get cropped off anyway, so we can negotiate a smaller price. It's less work for you and less money for us, which is great. The amount of subjects in there, is it 2 people, is it 5 people, is it a group of 100 clones, those kinds of things, having an idea of how that's going to change your pricing. If you're doing landscape art, the level of detail that's in it. Is it more like a concept sketch? Well, then that should be a lower price. If it's really detailed, intensive, cover art level, there's trees and houses and animals and whatever, then, know what your time is worth. Yeah. Know that that's definitely going to and should cost more. And art directors and creative directors expect that. I expect cover art to cost me more than like some piece I'm going to throw in a rule book or something I'm going to put on a card that's exactly. So and we're willing, like Lucas said, we're going to negotiate. Don't there's a fine line there. Don't pull us back and forth 5 and 6 times, but give us a rate. And if we say like, oh wow, my budget's only this, and but I really want to contract 20 pieces from you. Could we negotiate something a little different since you're getting a big bulk of this art? So just kind of be prepared and just know what you're worth as an artist. Know what your time is worth. Don't undervalue yourself.
Yeah, and there are companies that do have fixed rates that they give everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a newcomer or somebody that's been in the field for 10 years. They just have a set rate, and it's good and bad. depends on the company. But know what you're worth, to, and don't ever undervalue yourself, because you yourself are basically the product. Anyone can paint a knight, but it doesn't mean that they can paint a knight the same way you do.
Right.
If they're contacting you, they want your specific knight. Don't let people underplay you that, oh, you're just a hand for hire.
And that is a really good way to protect yourself as well. Now, if this is your first project, don't charge $2,000 a piece or anything like that, but be reasonable, and that's protecting you from getting a bad job too, if that makes sense. Like, if someone comes up to you and they're like, well, I'll give you $15 to do this cover art, maybe that's somebody you want to think about whether you really want to do that work at that price, So that's where, when we say know your worth, know your value, and don't be afraid occasionally to walk away from something that's not going to give you the amount that you're worth, because then a better job will come along, and then you won't be devoting your time to that job that's not paying you enough. You're free to do the other thing.
Yeah.
And I think that also artists are some of the people that business people like to take advantage of the most. Like there's the famous exposure doesn't have any calories.
Exposure killed Caravaggio.
Yeah.
That
it's not you can't eat exposure.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other terms that are kind of code for exposure, and like just be sure you're really reading carefully. Like doing things on spec is a trap. That means you're not getting paid for your work.
Yeah.
We have paid people to do specs before. Like if we've seen something and that I really like in their art, and I'm like, okay, I really like the style, but I see you have a bunch of dragons, but what I really want is a griffin.
Right.
Yeah. Can you do that? Then
Yeah.
I'll pay you to do a quick sketch to do a griffin.
I mean, you're not going to get a lot from that. You're not getting a full.
No, but I'm not
gonna. You should fight as much as you can to at least get paid for anything you produce.
Right.
Never do anything for free.
Yeah.
Like I had to do a bunch of test pieces recently for a company, and I made sure that I got paid for every single one.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's probably a great transition into contracts.
Yeah.
Yay! Everybody loves contracts.
Yeah.
So my best advice is just have a friend who's a lawyer. No.
Well, yeah.
And there you go.
And we're done with contracts. Okay. Important things and you can speak to more of this as we get in. When we write contracts, one thing that we definitely do is payment up front and then payment upon completion. That protects you, that protects us.
Yeah.
That way, you're getting the money up front to do the work, and then we know that you're gonna follow through with the contract. And then once it's done, we will happily give you the rest of that, but make sure you understand your terms. Is it payment within 10 days of completion? Is it payment within a month of completion? So that you can also, keep us on our toes and make sure that we are giving you your money, and that accounts payable or whoever, hasn't said something that you didn't get.
I've seen a lot of horror stories of artists that get half up front and then they complete the work and their years go by and they still haven't received it.
Oh,
and their contract doesn't state that they have to. So
yeah. One of the first jobs I did, I can't say which company, but I got a contract, and just to emphasize, read your contracts too. I just assumed, okay, I'm gonna get paid, oh God, what was it? It was 40 hours of work, and I only got $125 for it.
Ooh.
Painful.
Ouch.
Already. But, on top of that, I didn't thoroughly read the contract, and I didn't see that in the payment section, they said payment upon hard production. So it was only getting paid once the book was released, and it was a net 30 days, so 30 days after the book was published.
Oh.
So of course, the PDF came out, everyone bought the PDF. The book was then delayed 9 months. So I basically got paid a year after I completed
There's
the image.
$125.
And it's $125.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Keep an
So
eye on that.
so be sure. And when I was first starting, like it's really intimidating when people are sending you these, 15, 20. I just finished a 38-page contract, and it's intimidating. But the best way to look at it is it's a dance. Sometimes you're led through by the company. Other times you can tell them, hey, we need to swing this way. We need to go to this side. That's where part of the negotiation comes in. As you start reading contracts, you'll start learning some of the language. It always still kills me whenever a contract says, like, we will own this art in this universe or any yet discovered. That is an actual legal term that you will sometimes find. Yeah.
Multiversal rights.
Yes. There are companies that have multiversal rights to that word. Like literally, yeah. But it's you'll start learning it as you start reading these contracts. But most of the time, the things you need to focus on are what are we agreeing to for the production time frame? What are we agreeing to the how much they can use it? A lot of contracts you are then specified what you're allowed to use to. At the very least, negotiate that you can use it in future portfolios, and if you can swing it as much print and personal use that you can.
Yeah, we're a pretty artist-focused company. We have an unusually high number of artists in managerial positions. So there is kind of we want to allow artists as much leeway as they can, because we want people to be happy with us and continue working with us. And I think most reputable companies want artists to be happy and to continue working with them. Where you need to be more wary is with newer, smaller indie companies that don't necessarily have the budget, don't have the reputation. It's kind of easy to get screwed over by someone that you don't know.
Yeah. And that's where it's important on your end too to have that kind of boilerplate template contract on your end. So if you agree to do work with someone and they don't send you a contract, cool, now you get to send them one. But make sure you have a contract. Make sure you've got the dates and the pricing and how you're getting paid and when you're getting paid. All of those things are laid out, because then if they don't follow through, if it's a small company, something happens, they don't follow through, I've got it in writing. You owe me this much money. I want to see it, and you have to pay it. We have a contract.
But also, make sure it's also spelled out the rights as well.
Yes.
Because I've had situations where I have produced a piece of artwork, things didn't work out, the contract was nullified. That artwork is then returned to me. And then I can then sell, say I did a vignetted character, I can then sell that to a future RPG or something later
Another
on.
company looking for something similar, you can turn that around.
Because again, a lot of small companies are just looking for, kind of stock art for their RPGs and stuff. So, any contract you're reading, try to keep in mind, whatever rights I'm selling, am I okay with it now, but also long term? Think of yourself 20 years down the pike. One thing that we negotiated early on when I started working with you is for Spirit Island stuff, and I'm glad how much that has blown up. 20 years from now, when I'm trying to create an Art of Lucas Durham opus book, I have the rights. We negotiated the rights that I can put that in the book. So that hey, this was a benchmark project. I want to share what I did with it.
And it sounds scary to be contracts and this and specifics and language and all of that. If you've got a question on your contract, don't be afraid to ask. I have artists do that all the time where they're like, hey, I think you're saying this with your contract, but I really want to make sure. And, and we'll talk about it and we'll explain it in further detail or whatever, because it's legal terms. It can feel like a foreign language sometimes. So don't be afraid to ask your friends, ask the community. You're going to find somebody like Lucas or Adam or I who worked with contracts that can help you through oh, that's what they're saying here. I know it sounds scary, but it's actually just this. No big deal.
And also don't be afraid to approach a copyright lawyer too. Like
Yep.
you'll see copyright lawyers with I think the average is somewhere between $300 and $500 an hour for their kind of their services. A lot of times, what we're producing, it's only going to take them about 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah. So it's a lot cheaper than it actually is. They're not going to round up to the hour. That's an obvious another resource you can use. So.
Absolutely. So along with that, we've kind of talked about have project dates in your contract. So along with project dates, understanding your schedule and your abilities as far as your art output. So if you're getting ready to work on a project and you're going to take on 10 pieces, but your deadline is a month from now, are you a full-time artist? Are you a part-time artist and you've got a full-time job and you only have 10 hours a week to work on this? Can you deliver on what you're promising that person? Really make sure that you think about well, it takes me 5 hours to do this kind of piece and 10 hours to do this kind of piece, and I just promised them 10 of these in the next week. Oops. Know where that's worth, because that's going to help you in your negotiations so that you don't overpromise and underdeliver, which no art director ever wants to see.
This is something I'm bad at, because I want to promise everybody everything. Mm-hmm. I want to be like, I'll do art for it. Yeah, of course I'll do art for it. Yeah. Learn when to say no. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to take every job.
Right. I would much rather have someone say I think I could get 5, but I'm really not sure. So let's commit to 3 and see where we're at in your timeline. And then if you've got the other 2 still available, I'd love to do those.
Yeah.
I'd much rather go ahead of time and prepare for the fact that you might not have time. Or the other side of that, if you're working on a project and something comes up, we get it, we're humans, life happens, tell us. Most art directors, I can only speak from, small experience here, but most art directors would much rather have you say hey, that piece we were working on? Well, I've had this death in the family. I've been sick for a week. I broke my hand and can't paint. Yeah. Whatever. Tell us, we're humans, we get it, and then we'll either say, okay, that's fine, we can extend that deadline a couple weeks and see if that helps, or we'll say, no problem, can you get me line art? We'll have someone else ink it. We'll work around that to the best of our abilities, but tell us ahead of time when there's a problem, instead of waiting and then we're going, this person never delivered on this art. I guess I won't work with them again.
We had someone during Spirit Island that was one of our favorite artists. We were like, the work that she does is fantastic, and we're really excited about having it on here. And she did one piece. She was supposed to do 10 pieces for us. She did one and then ghosted. And we kept paying her forever. And then finally, after a year went by, we got I'm so sorry. I lost track of this and I had some family issues, etc. And we said, okay, fine. Can you finish out the thing? We ended up getting only 5. And we haven't worked with her again. Even though we loved her work. It was great stuff. But which is not reliable. So,
right. Well, and just to go back to committing to a workload, a lot of times when I was starting, sometimes I'd be offered 5 pieces, and instead of taking that 5, I would just say, I can only commit to 1 at this point in time. Mm-hmm. Even if I could take on those 5, I kind of wanted to show a quality work relationship with me.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that it's easy to get your foot in the door. It's harder to get that return invite to come back and work with the company again. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you put your first foot forward as good as possible, so that hey, I want to invite you to come back and work on the expansion set or something.
And from my perspective, if someone says that to me, and says, hey, no, I just want to do 1, and then after that we go, okay, well, can you have 1 more? That says to me, okay, this is someone who's responsible, that can manage their time and knows what they're capable of. That immediately says that to me. And it also says that they're not just going to crank out these pieces they're going to take their time and get this one right, and then work on the next one.
Yeah.
And something to remember too when we're talking about these timelines, there are going to be more steps involved than just when you do art for yourself, obviously, because when you do a piece, you're like, oh, I have this great idea, and then you just do it, and then it's great. But when you're going back and forth with a creative director or an art director or a project manager, whatever that is, you're gonna have more steps involved. So you're gonna do
sketches, please.
Yeah, you're gonna do sketches and comps and okay, yeah, that seems to be, and you're gonna go back and forth till we get to the right spot. And that's to protect you and that's to protect us.
Yeah.
So then we'll go back and forth, like Lucas does this and it's amazing. So we'll give him an art prompt and then he'll be like, okay, here's 4 rough sketches. And it can be rough, and that's fine as long as I can tell what's going on in the pictures so that we can be like, oh, okay, yes, that composition is great. Just tweak this thing and make sure they're wearing this kind of hat, not that kind of hat, and then we can progress on. And then we'll go to, more solid line art, and then we might go to color flats, and then we'll go to the finished art. And that's so that as you're going along in your process, because some people are digital and some people are still very traditional in their art, and what I hate, I feel so bad when this happens, when someone goes from sketch to final art, and then we're like, ooh, those colors aren't right, I can't do this. And then it's like, oh no, but I did it traditionally, and then I'm like, oh no, okay, how can we fix this? So remember to keep that in mind too, that it's gonna be a little bit of a process, and it really is to make it easier for you, so that if you're doing it digital, it's a lot easier to go back and do those fixes. If you're going traditional, it's a lot tougher. So do your sketches, do your line art, do your color flats, and then do your finished piece. But remember that that's going to extend how long it takes you to work on something. So just keep that in mind when you're balancing how many pieces you can do.
And also, to keep in mind, because I've had this conversation with someone recently, the art director is your advocate at the company. They are the face of the company to you, but they're the ones who are trying to fight editorial. They're trying to fight the committee that is making the final approval, that this is not only the artist I want to hire, but this is the final art we are going to go with. Try to supply them with as much great material as possible, so that they can do the best job advocating for you to continue on with the project, or a long-term relationship with the company itself.
Yeah, but they are on your side.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what we're here for. Like I said, we do this as much to protect you as it is to get a good final product out. I mean, we all want a good final product, because the better that product does, then the more people who are getting eyes on your art. But also we're fighting for you, and we're here for you. We've all been there. We've all done the freelance thing, and we get it, and we know it's tough. One thing we didn't touch on when we were talking about contracts, I just want to make sure I throw out there, invoices. Please, 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 please have an invoice.
And PayPal will do them for free.
Yeah. So if you want a written check, or you want PayPal, just make sure that's written into your contract too. How are you getting paid? And then have that invoice. If you're doing PayPal, it's great. You can just send that invoice out. If you're doing another format, that's fine too. But have that PDF, that PayPal invoice, whatever that is, your name, your contact information, what we owe you, what the project is, so that I can give that to the person that's going to cut your check. Don't just send me a random email. It's going to get lost in the mix. We've gotten big enough now that we literally have a bills at to get your payment from. And if she doesn't get an invoice, she's like, I don't know who this person is. Am I supposed to pay them? What's happening here? Yeah. So it's a really easy thing to forget in the mix of everything that's going on, but it is one of the most crucial things, especially if you've got that 50% up front, 50% upon completion. That's my reminder that you haven't been paid yet. Yeah. So please have an invoice.
For your sake, have it. Yeah.
I always assume that the person that is hiring me to do the art is not the person who is cutting the final check. Because, large companies, there's a lot of money being, thrown around.
If it's a business with more than 2 people, odds are it's not. It's not the same person.
Right.
And if it is a business of 2 people, odds are they are in so many directions mentally that they need the reminder of an invoice.
If you can at all, I always try to keep, and this is just a trade thing, I always try to keep a little bit of a preview of the image, so that anytime someone is trying to pay, it's it's for this exact thing.
Yeah.
So,
So we've talked about knowing your timelines, knowing your limits, how many pieces can you do. So what happens when you've got a deadline looming and you've got creative burnout? I love when we get this question.
So
how do you solve creative block? And go.
I don't. No, I'm actually like I can tell you exactly what not to do, and that's what I do. And that's just push through it. You need to take time off. If you are self-employed, set hours for yourself. And I don't do that because I also own the company, and so like it's everything to me. So I'm.
And you also have this semi-annoying person going, "Hey, our deadline's coming up. Did you get that piece I need?"
That's yeah. So like I'll sometimes work 16-hour days doing that, and I shouldn't be doing that, but I do. And what's worked for me is having a wife who will say, "Stop working. You're going to die." But that's really it, is walk away from it. No, like if you can just go, I work 8-hour days, I work from 9 to 5, I work, or if that doesn't work, I work from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. It doesn't matter when, but like set limits for yourself. Draw for fun also. That's real big. For years, I was not drawing anything for fun. I was only drawing work, and I got burnt out real bad. And if you crash and burn, you're not doing anyone any good.
Yeah, and those are great ways to try to set yourself up for success there so that you can hopefully avoid the burnout. But I know, like, I'm sure, Lucas, you've definitely experienced this where you're trying to do 3 different projects at once and you've got a deadline coming up and you're like, oh, now what do I do? Because I gotta get this done.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to the negotiation process at the beginning. I try not to commit to anything that I know I can't finish. And like sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes you're trying to like, okay, I got rent coming up. I gotta fill this in somehow. But the integrity of the contract is so important to me. Like that's what has to be the primary. Like try not to commit to anything that you can't finish. But on top of that, like what I've done is tried to build into my process ways, just a process that like I won't get burnt out. Or if I'm feeling burnt out, I can just like work through it. And that's one of the reasons that not only for you guys that I send like all these sketches and stuff, I'm by doing that, it allows me to set goals for myself along the way. If I already have the line work down, then the painting portion of it is gonna go so much faster. Mm-hmm. The more you can do at the beginning of it, the more the end point in the process can just be like mindless production.
And I think it's important to kind of know for you yourself, like how can you kind of do some on-the-spot stress relief, or what can you do? Like remember those little tips and tricks for yourself. You're like, like this is my go-to movie when I'm feeling really burnt out because I always feel inspired because it's so pretty. This is my go-to book that I read a chapter and then I'm like, okay, yep, I can focus now. I can do this. Figure out, or what those little things are, so that when you are sitting there and you're like, crap, I really got to get this done because I have 3 days until this deadline and I'm almost done, but I feel so burnt out. Okay, I'm going to go read a chapter and I'm going to come back and I'm going to make this work and I'm going to get through it. Yeah. So just know what those are so that you don't run into those.
And art sucks. So it's hard. It's hard.
It is.
It's not like being a mechanic where you have like a very rigid, like I know I have to put this piece and this piece and this piece together and then we're done. There's so much expression and self put into it that sometimes I'll finish an entire piece and I go, I hate this and it doesn't look good, and I'll throw it away because like it's not right and I'm not happy with it. And like that's just something that you have to deal with, and that it sucks.
But again, that's another reason, like when you're in the negotiation process, like there are projects where like this isn't, if this was me, I would not be painting this like like I don't always like painting monsters, but like I got a lot of monster stuff with with Fate of the Elder Gods. But one thing that helped is like, oh, I'm getting paid a decent amount for this, and so it's like whatever, like, they're paying me, I'll give them what they need. Money is a great influencer on me, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but
it could be a good motivator.
Part of the half and half payment though, like if I have all the money up front, I lose a lot of motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
So like that's good from my perspective as getting paid as an artist also.
Yeah.
So and then I think the last point we'll touch on, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And I'm going to gear some specifically toward Lucas here.
Okay.
All right. So you're an artist.
Mm-hmm.
You go to your first show. How do you get a table? How do you get a booth? Where do you sell? What's that process like?
How do I even start? So when I started, and I mean, everyone has their own path. So, I can give you some anecdotes, but what you're going to experience is going to be different than what I've experienced. Gen Con has changed. I've only been coming here for about 8 years, and it has changed drastically since then. And that's a short amount of time. So it might not exactly work for you guys, but what I ended up doing was the first couple of years that I was here, I didn't have a table. I would just kind of walk the floor, talk to people, got from both artists and art directors, I just got feedback. How do I break into the field? How do I make my art a target for certain companies and certain art directors I want to work with? Then over, I think I did like 2 where I wasn't doing anything but walking around. 2 years, what I did was I just kind of, I boothed with other artists. One of the nice things about the art community is, especially within the convention, but also Gen Con, is it's a very, very small community. So everyone knows each other. And what I like about the fantasy community as a whole is that it's competitive, but it's not cutthroat. No one's trying to knock the legs out from underneath you. Everyone wants you to succeed. Because it just makes the community stronger, because everyone influences each other. So what I ended up doing was I actually started, I call it shadowing, but I was just an assistant. Aaron Miller, who's out in Artist Alley, I would help him. He's got a assistant this year doing basically the same thing I did, was just kind of helping him hand out prints, talking to people when they approached the booth. Got me a little bit of experience without the stress of okay, how am I gonna pay for my own table? Because Gen Con's an expensive show. I'll give you the actual rates we had. It's $550 for a small table, $650 for a large, and that's on top of any other expenses you have, whether it's prints, framing, hotel. So there's a lot to worry about. But if you can find an artist that'd be like, hey, can we strike up a rapport? Can I help you with this table? So they get free labor and you get maybe a ticket and some hands-on experience running it. Then you can kind of transition into doing your own stuff. And there's a lot of smaller shows that if you want to practice before trying a big show like Gen Con or one of the Comic Cons like Wizard World, an easy way is to find, there's anime conventions that their tables run somewhere between $60 and $120, which is very cheap. It's a lot of first come first serve, but if you have a fast browser, that's an easy way to just kind of break in without having that kind of expense.
When I was starting out, I tabled at some real small conventions, and I think my first table was $50, and that was 12 years ago now. But
sometimes libraries too. I'm sorry, but sometimes libraries will have free tables because they just want people to come in. Because they'll do a small convention just to get people reading.
Local gaming stores, they'll do that too. Sometimes the one near me, we do the Geeky Yard Sale is what we call it, and a lot of people will come, like we'll have different people who do crafts and art and whatnot because the tables are $25 a table. And if nothing else, it's a chance for you to get used to selling your art, talking to people, you know, how does this work, those kinds of things, because it's scary to try to, you're selling
I
your
still have
art,
an awful
selling
time
yourself,
at it.
you know, that's a scary
Yeah.
thing, and that's where like assisting another artist is a great way to just get used to the noise of something like Gen Con and trying to talk to people about the art and those interactions, because that's scary.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of pressure off the artist also helping them out like that. Like when I was doing my table, my girlfriend at the time came and sat with me, and she handled talking to people and taking money and all that stuff, so I didn't have to deal with any of the commerce part of it, and I could just focus on the art. And that allowed me to talk to people a little bit more genuinely because I'm not asking them to shell out at the end of it. So.
I think that's probably a good time to just open it up to some questions, if we've got questions out here, or... Yeah.
Yes.
So how many artists do you work with in an average year, and how many of those are cold calls you get you?
Okay. All right. How many artists do I work with in an average year? We have, let's see, Spirit Island. I probably work with somewhere between, I'd say I work with around 25 to 30 artists on average in a year.
It's usually about 15 to 20 a project.
Yeah. We have some projects that only have like 10 to 12. And we've got some others that, you know, we might need more. We have some that are 1 or 2. It just depends on the scope of what we're doing. So yeah, I'd say I like genuinely actually like going back and forth work with probably about 25 to 30 artists a year. How many of those were cold calls? That's a really good question. There's probably a good mix in there actually, the more I think about it. Some of it were quote unquote cold calls on my end where I reached out to them. And I do get some people who will send me emails, or I might see them at a show and they'll pitch me their portfolio or give me a card at a show, and I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I've got this project coming up. Yeah, that would be really great. Let's do that. And then I definitely have a handful of my known, like, these are my dependable artists for this style, this style, and this style.
And as time goes on, that list gets a little longer. The people that we work with and know are the people that we like to work with if we can. And also we lean toward, like with smaller things, it is, if we can afford to use one artist for a project, we like to do that because it provides a unified look for a thing. A lot of things like an RPG book, you obviously can't have one person do that entire thing. It's ridiculous. That's so much art.
And the production timeline will have a big effect on that too. Like, can I afford to have one artist work on this as far as time? Because this is 100 pieces of art. How long is that going to take one person versus, you know, many?
Right.
But yeah, I try with each project that we do. I like finding. I just like working with new people.
Yeah.
So you know, I always try to find a few new people that we can bring into the mix, give us some new life and some new flavor as we work on different projects. But it's definitely like, I definitely have that core group of people too that I'm like, okay, I know you can do this, and I know your timelines, because I'm thinking about, you know, from conception to production. Okay, I know I can depend on this person to turn this around in this amount of time, which is great, because then I can spend extra time focusing on this new artist, which I know will take a little longer. But I have a pretty good mix between ones I find and cold calls. Yeah.
I think the best way I've ever heard an art director talk about like finding artists is she would say it's like playing Sudoku, you know, like it's because, you know, not only are they trying to figure that out, they're trying to specifically find pieces that are appropriate for you too. Yeah. So like, I just want to make sure everyone knows, don't get disheartened if like you talk to an art director, they're like, oh my God, I love your work, and you don't hear from them for like 6 months to a year.
Yeah. There's one guy that Alan, that we've wanted to work with for years and just haven't had the right thing for him. That we love him as a person, we love his work, and we just haven't had the right fit for it. And That happens.
I walk through Artist Alley and I will buy art from so many people because I'm like, I love this and I love this and I love this, and I don't have a project for them, but I'll just buy this piece because I love it.
Yeah.
And it's tough because you want to give work to so many people, but
Right.
like you said, sometimes that project just isn't there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep your name around and remember you, because I've done that before where I've had a card around for a year and then been like, yes, I finally got this project that I give to this person. It's going to be great.
Yeah. And another thing to keep in mind is sometimes, like, I mean, first off, everyone here is at an advantage because making face-to-face contact is so much better than a cold call.
Oh, way better.
Because you know you can put a face to a name or a face to the art.
Especially if I see you year after year,
Yeah.
and I go like, "Oh, hey, it's you again." And like,
Yeah. But if you're like full cold calling, like where you're just mailing postcards or like emailing, I think the average I heard was it can take 7 to 9 like reach outs before you might even hear from the art director. Just because I don't know how big your volume of cold calls are, but I've heard anywhere between there. I think WotC, they said they get 1,000 emails a day.
Oh, we don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But like but I mean, everyone wants to work for Magic the Gathering.
Right.
So like, you know, that's the volume they're seeing. I'm sure you guys still get a decent like
We get
hit.
a pretty good clip. I was trying to think about in my email how many I get.
I get fewer now because a lot of them go through contact and a lot of them go to you.
Yeah.
And most of them I just forward on to her anyway.
Between Slack and our general email and my personal email, I probably get, and we're a smaller company, I probably get maybe 10, 15 a month that are coming through on average that are our cold call style. But then again, when we're at shows, you know, that's not including all the people that we're talking to at shows. So
Yeah. I send her a bare minimum of one a week.
yeah.
Just like I almost as a hobby at this point.
It's very exciting.
You said that you were trying to do all of the art and starting company at the same time. I'm kind of sitting in much the same position. Got anything that you wish you would have known?
You can go back in
How much time you got?
It's a whole other panel. Right?
Right.
Give me the top 3 suggestions.
I wish I would have known. Okay, so the big one is have a thick skin, and that's really, really good advice for anybody. You're gonna get some people say awful things about your work on the internet.
Sometimes your face.
And sometimes they're right, and that's the worst. Probably the first 2 years I was doing it was agony. If I would look at the internet, I would just go like, it doesn't matter that all these people are saying good things. This one guy that said
That
something
one
that
guy.
I kind of agree with
Yep.
has torn my entire world down. So develop a thick skin and accept criticism. That's so big for an artist.
I think just in general, no matter how long you've been doing it,
Right.
that's super important.
In terms of the company end of things, don't expect to get paid right away. That's the downfall of a lot of, if you're starting your own company, the downfall of a lot of them is that they will go, okay, I've made this game, I put it out, I sold 1,500 copies of it, I got a chunk of change, I'm gonna go drinking, have some fun, enjoy myself, buy a new TV, something like that, and now I have no money left. Our first 3 years, we put every penny back into the company. We didn't take salary for a while, and until we knew it was sustainable. And that's our philosophy with hiring employees still also, is we go, we're not gonna hire anyone until we know that we can keep them on based on our revenue.
That was going to be my follow-up question. When did you decide to bring on other artists?
When it got too much for me to do.
Okay.
Yeah, is that when you go?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, 2013, she was our first outside hire.
Yeah. Well, 14, I guess, 2014. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I was art directing Spirit Island at that time, and having a nightmare with it because I was also trying to draw a new Sentinels expansion and Sentinel Tactics at the same time. And thinking about other games also, as I was just spread way too thin.
I mean, the company started in 2011, and the first official hire was Jody, who worked in the warehouse.
Right.
And then
Jody's
2000.
like a friend though, so
Yeah, and then 2014 was when I came on. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a timeline between when they started and when they did their first official new hire.
Yeah, and I didn't get paid until 2013. So
Yeah.
So it was a huge labor of love, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. It was entirely labor of love. You have to really care about what you're doing, or else it'll fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wondering, the case you mentioned around the traditional artist where they did all their complete work and colours, and then you looked at it and thought, well, this isn't right. What sort of sketches should you be getting? How much, I guess, should you as an advance given? How long should you as an artist be spending on those sketches, I guess?
Yeah. Okay. So the question, and in case you can hear, the question was with the artist where we got all the way to full colors and it wasn't right. How much time should you be spending on sketches, and what should you be doing in between? So the problem that happened there was that steps got skipped. It went from here's some conceptual sketches to oh no, I've run out of time and I have a deadline. Here's a finished piece of art. Okay, sure. We skipped some major steps there. As far as how much time should you spend with sketches, those sketches are your foundation. So send a few examples, send 4 or 5 or whatever, so that we can give you some direction on like I said, this composition, but with that character from that sketch, but in that pose. Okay, now send me another sketch with that. Perfect. All right, that sketch is great. Lay down some line work. Because from sketch to line work, things can change as far as not the art prompt, but maybe your understanding of clothing attire. Or something like, oh, when I looked at that sketch, I thought it was a puffy shirt, but what you actually meant was a leather jacket, or I don't know.
Right. So this is supposed to be set in the 1600s, and you clearly drew modern clothes on this.
Right. Yeah. So, and that line work will then establish those types of details. Then just throw together some quick color flats. Like Lucas and I do this all the time, where he'll be like, okay, here, I just gave you some quick colors. There's blue in the sky and the grass is green and whatever. Is that what you want?
Just like the
No,
mood.
it's supposed to be a brown field or whatever. Oh, okay, cool. We'll make it brown. And that step establishes a lot of that type of, okay, in the final piece, like, oh, I understand you wanted a wheat field, not a field of grass. Okay, cool. And then you go to those finals when you feel like, yep, I totally understand what's going on now. Does that kind of help you out there?
Sorry. So just from my perspective, like working with the standard process that a lot of art directors in specifically the game field are looking for is they're usually looking for like tight thumbnail sketches. I usually send it like 2 to 3 days after the contract's signed. And then usually about a week after that is when a tight pencil drawing is established. And then depending on how much time the contract is, it's usually about a week to 2 weeks for the final painting. And I mean, it all depends on like how tight the drawing needs to be, how complex it is, and everything.
And
but that's generally the steps are a really loose, like what is the composition of this going to be? The line work so we can see what the drawing actually is, the colors so we can tell the mood of the drawing, and then the final piece.
Yeah. And that will obviously change. If you're doing a rush, you might need to kind of tighten up some of those, but that's a pretty good timeline.
Yeah, and it also changes too, like as your relationship with the company and the art director evolves too. Like I know my stuff has kind of gotten a little loose, but
we trust you.
But part of it is you establish like the first couple of projects you do with whatever company you're working for, try to keep it as tight as you can, so not only the art director can read it, but when they're presenting it to the team or whoever, that they can direct them through whatever your thing is, and then as things go on, sometimes my stuff gets a little more muddy, just because deadlines and stuff can be shaped around that.
Always skewed towards precision and professionalism, and as you get friendlier with people that you're working with, then your relationship can change.
And for me, and I can only speak to my process as far as this goes, but some of those sketches are where some of the the most fun and the magic happens, because I'll send you an art prompt of, all right, this is my vision and this is what we're doing, this is how the card works and those kinds of things, but you might have some idea that I'm looking at 30 different arts. You're just thinking about this one thing. You might have had some idea that I never would have thought of. And in the process of those sketches, you're like, well, here's these 3 that really fit your prompt. I just wanted to throw this extra one in there. Use it if you want or not. And I'll be like, oh, that's so cool. Yes, absolutely. Let's do that
maybe
thing.
That's really good for another one.
That happened with the recent Spirit, didn't it? Like with the latest Spirit Island expansion. You had a very tight idea. I think it was like a paragraph description at that point. But we ended up, I just had an idea where it's like, well, what if we, make it more abstract? And we ended up incorporating all these other elements from, and that's another nice thing from working with you guys for so long is, I start getting invested in the IP, and it's like, how can we build on it? But always send them what they want, but then if you have another idea, you can always submit that too.
The worst thing we'll say is no, but again, we're on your side. So, us for Spirit Island, a lot of the art prompts that we get are kind of visions from the designer's head too. So if the game designer's thinking one thing and then we're kind of working off that vision, but then you present this other idea that's out of left field we never would have thought of, and I'm like, no, that is perfect. I'll go take that idea and I'll pitch it and I'll fight for it if I think that that's right. So don't be afraid to do that.
And so my working relationship a lot is I work very closely with my business partner who also designs games, Christopher. Lots of time, he and I have known each other since we're 10, so there's a lot of unspoken communication there. But a lot of times what will happen is he'll have an idea for a thing and I'll start drawing it and go, this doesn't work at all. This is a garbage idea for a card. I hate it and it's not going to work. So I'll take something completely different and it might change how the card works even eventually. Not everyone's going to do that, but feel emboldened to take risks. As long as you're also providing exactly what they ask for.
Worst thing to say is no.
Because they are hiring you for you. Always remember that.
We want to see your take on it, and we want the game to look the best that it can be.
Yeah, in the back.
So you mentioned you got paid $125 for 40 hours of work. So I'm just curious, is there an industry standard for what you would charge or what you're actually paid in a certain account?
There are some industry standards.
Don't let yourself.
Are we still on camera?
Trevor, can you take this part out?
Don't let yourself get paid less than minimum wage.
Yeah,
that's for damn sure.
Right.
Charge more for bigger companies?
A lot of the bigger companies have standardized rates, but again, they're hiring you for you. They will be willing to negotiate sometimes. And I think that's one of the things that you can see with some of the bigger established companies that they do, try to work with certain artists more that way.
Back to her question, do you have any relationship, this games industry, illustration part of it, is it connected to the illustration marketplace in general?
It's kind of its own little thing, and that's
better or world
worse.
Or
It's part of
So what you're telling this room full of illustrators is get out of the games industry.
If I'm just speaking candidly with you, this is a hard industry to make it a living at, working just freelance in just doing stuff. I've done it for 8 years. Obviously, I just jumped into a games company because it is a slog.
Freelance work is hard in general.
It is hard in general.
Yeah.
This in particular, I mentioned licensing. Most game companies will buy out everything, and that usually is supposed to mean that they are paying more. A lot of companies here, unfortunately, have the idea that I don't need to, other people are charging less, so I can charge less. You're also real talk, you guys, we're all also facing the fact that we are a global market. We are servicing, there are artists in other parts of the world where the US dollar goes a lot further. There was a time period there where I was thinking I should move to Peru because a Fantasy Flight card could basically rent a house for a month there.
There's something in the water down in South America too. There's so many artists.
There's so many,
there.
and that's the thing. Brazil has gotten
Brazil is
the artists coming out of Brazil are
Yeah.
amazing, and the U.S. dollar goes a lot further there,
Yeah.
and it's good for them. That's the thing with competitive market and everything.
And
I
that's
don't
a little bit of where networking can work to your advantage.
right, and that's the thing. What we are giving is a service. Not only does your art is your art something that you're selling, you're also selling your ability to communicate with the art director and the company, and also just there's ways that we can cross promote too. I'm here, I got a whole wall of original Spirit Island art. I've got a sign that says their booth number and stuff.
If there's if it's an option of paying a little bit more and getting someone who's there to support the product with their work and vice versa, to have a public face to that, that's worth it. Even just from a purely mercenary marketing standpoint, that's good to have.
Yeah. So I think to kind of better. Sorry.
Oh, and I'm sorry. Just to bring it back to your question in the back is that I think there's a lot of smaller companies that are not considering that when they are throwing out some of the price ranges they are, and at that point you have to say as an artist, is this worth my time?
Yep.
Because honestly, there are so many other ways to make money now. Kickstarter and Patreon have both drastically changed the game. I kind of wish they were around when I was coming out of college because there would have been a lot of smaller companies that I would have just said no to because I would have rather put my time into a personal project that I could have kickstarted. And Artist Alley now, when I first started here, Artist Alley was primarily people that were working for Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and Magic, and then everybody else was just trying to get either the quick sales, or they were trying to get the smaller companies. Now everyone has their own book, everyone has games that they're producing themselves and kickstarting. There's so many other ways that make those smaller companies negotiate now because you are worth more than a lot of them are
So I
asking
think
for.
Self-publishing is easier than ever.
Yeah.
And especially books, you can get books for pretty reasonable and turn those around and that's a great product.
So I think the big thing is, as far as figuring out what's good pricing, don't be afraid to talk to other artists in the community. Hey, I saw you did work for this company and you did these kind of pieces. Can I ask you how much you got paid? Again, the worst thing they'll say is no, you can go talk to somebody else. But don't be afraid to go to your community and say hey, I'm starting out, what should I be asking? Those kinds of things. That's a great way to get that. And then the other point to remember, you are starting a business, but now you've got things like Patreon. Patreon's a great way while you're trying to get your gigs rolling. Not only are you going to build your portfolio, but you're going to potentially be able to make a little bit of that side money to keep you rolling while you're transitioning from your full-time job or trying to get that first gig.
But I think even more importantly, though, is that you're building a community with that.
And
community is super important in the digital marketplace.
Yeah, and that's something that's becoming a major role. Not the biggest role, but it is becoming a factor in hiring now. I know that there are some book publishing art directors that have said they have gotten artists attached to projects partially because of their social media following. It's allowed them to be hey, I know this is a new person that I want to take a chance on. By the way, they have 1 million followers, so not only are we getting the buyers from the book, but also like, hey, people are going to buy this book for this this cover.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've bought things based on people that I follow. I go like, oh, hey, I love that art. Like, I don't care about this book, but like the art is someone I like. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, an art direction question. Let's say you have an artist who is you're further along in the process, not completely finished, and the piece is mediocre. It's not good, it's not bad, it's mediocre. How do you handle that? Do you try and work through it and somehow get them to make it look good? Do you just grit your teeth, okay, just move along, we have a deadline?
It depends. Yeah. So like one of the advantages we have as a company is I'm an on-staff artist. And so if there's something that I see that I can go, all right, I can touch this up and make it usable, then I can do that. The times I've had to do that are very, very few. And sometimes, a lot of the times, it will just say, well, we just got to call this one a wash. And we go, this piece is not good enough to put in the book, so we're not going to do it. It's not worth me trying to fix. It's not. And they still get paid for it. It's just not going to go on there.
Yeah, so sometimes it depends on the deadline that we're up against. If we're really, really hard up against the deadline and I just do not have time to get art from another artist, I'll be like, all right, can we fix this? Can we make this work? What can we do? Yeah. How big is it going to be on the final page? Are you going to see that detailing? All those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And that's where we kind of have a distinct advantage with Adam. That we can do that, or we would go to the artist and be like, okay, well, let's salvage this. Throw him in this kind of background, and we'll put it on this page instead, and we'll make it work. But yeah, we would always pay for it. We have had some where we've gotten a piece and we were like, we just can't.
Yeah.
We just can't. Everything else they did was so good, and this one, like, we just can't use this. And we've had to kind of be like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to recommission this art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens, yeah.
And just from the artist perspective, I've definitely had people come back and like, hey, Luke, I kind of phoned this one in. Can you push it a little bit further? And I usually try to agree to about 2 like decent sized revisions, where it might take me roughly like a half a day's worth of work.
Put revisions in your contract.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
That's super important.
Yep.
And that's what I do with like my private contracts. Like I will usually put it in 2 revisions, and then what I start doing is I charge a little bit more. So like you as an art director, if there's some portion of the budget that you can possibly argue, hey, if it's worth that, I don't know your situation, but yeah.
It's tough when you get to that point and you're like, oh, I just gotta move on from this one.
Yeah.
And we're gonna call it what it is, and we're just gonna have to move on. And that's a hard decision to make. The biggest thing is look at your budget, look at your timeline, and look at how integral to the project that piece is. Are we talking about the cover art? Yeah, you might need to ditch it and try again. Are we talking about a piece that's gonna be on a card this big? You might be able to salvage
Or
it.
it's a filler image on the 300th page.
Yeah, and I've had some where we were like, okay, cool, let's put this in the rule book. We'll grayscale it, we'll throw it in the rule book. Okay, that's workable. Yeah, we can make that work. Let's do that.
Yeah, there are some things
And that's
that we can.
a piece I don't have to commission later.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Small context to the question. So, doing a small business or a game with a couple of friends. I'm not like a professional artist, so it's hard to kind of go like, oh, this piece is gonna be great for this board game. So, not too confident in like the work that I'm doing. What I'm doing with my friends, I'm hoping that I'm producing, the best that I can.
Yeah.
Is there a community out there that helps edit that stuff before I bring it over to them? As opposed to just throwing it into the ocean and just seeing what the internet says about the piece that I did. Is there like?
I mean, talk to other artists.
There-
Would be
Yeah.
my biggest thing.
I mean, there's a lot of art groups that they will do community crits. Speaking of thick skin earlier, like
Especially since I'm not looking to do art as a full-time job. Like I've got like my engineering stuff that I personally like to do. So I'm gonna do something else.
something I've kind of tried to suggest to some people that are producing their own games like for the first time. Something you might want to consider is like, is there any way you can generate the game with, instead of quantity of art, like quality art, you know, and possibly do an outside hire that way. I know budgets are tight for that kind of stuff, but like sometimes, you know, limiting yourself in that way can sometimes come out with a better product. I mean, you know, Cards Against Humanity, there's like no art. It's basically just them having a template, and like, and now it's like in like every other household in America, you know, and they have nothing, like no art at all.
And sometimes those restraints can kind of lead you to a cool product in the end too. Like sometimes giving yourself that box of like, okay, I know I can do this, and this is what I do this well, and how can I make this work with this game? And sometimes it leads to a really cool minimalist approach, or you're like, I can do line work, but I don't know how to mix oils and do this or use Photoshop, whatever. Then do a black and white piece, and that's cool. Like do some sort of cool minimal black and white look that's just line art, and find a way to make that work. Kind of dig around on, you know, do internet searches, go into stores, just do a little bit of research on what are my strengths. If it's only these 3 things, cool, but figure out like, oh, well, somebody did that and that was really successful. I could do that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. What's worked best for me in terms of refining my work, and I can't name anything specific to what you're looking for, but is finding Discord servers of people that can help. That I've met a number of artists online and talked to them through Twitter or talked to them through email or whatever, and then said at some point they're like, hey, I have this Discord server, you want to come in? We're just a bunch of artists that we just talk about this stuff. If you look at Reddit, might have some. I hesitate to send you to Board Game Geek. Just because it can be dangerous there. But I'm sure that there's some people that can give you design feedback, graphic design feedback, and or like look for some graphic design community, because I think that from your description, it sounds like you're better off going with a graphic design route than you are an illustration route.
I'm doing both. It's all crazy.
Yeah, figuring out how you can create an illustration style that suits the things that you do feel like comfortable doing.
But the advantage of a Discord server is it's a chat room. It's not posts like on Reddit, so there's not the same quite level of detachment. You get feedback right away, and so that's kind of what I recommend.
Thank you.
So you were talking about including the number of revisions in your contract. The
Yes.
freelance work that I've been doing, I always charge hourly to protect myself. Is that non-standard in games? Like, would a company be like really weirded out by you giving an hourly quote?
No, so no, that's not weird, but consider that the quote that you give them for an hourly is going to change if they make you revise things all the time. And if it changes and you say, okay, I need another $100 for this, and they say we're not going to give you $100, then you have a problem.
Just make sure you specify in your contract up
You
front,
say,
like, you know,
I'll allow 2 revisions, and that's it, and then I have to be paid for the image.
Could you specify instead, like, essentially give them an hourly quote and be like, it'll be 12 hours, and then, like, keep in your mind that if they make you do revisions, that would be the 12 hours, and like. So it would be like, if you go over that, that's on you because you quoted the 12 hours in your contract, or like something. Would that work?
What I would say as far as that initial quote, and again, I can only speak for myself, it's okay in your mind if you're thinking about it hourly.
Yeah.
But it's really hard on my perspective of my project, because like I have a fine arts degree and I can think about how long it takes me to do a thing, but that's not going to be the same as how long it takes you.
Right.
It might take me 3 times longer because I'm not doing it every day.
And the last thing a company
and an
wants
hourly
is
rate becomes real
price
scary real quick. So if you know, like, it takes you 5 hours to do that piece, just quote it out at that chunked rate, like,
and there's going to be times
instead of trying to go per hour.
There's going to be times you got to bite the bullet a little bit and go like, well, this ended up taking me longer than I thought, but I'm still getting paid the same amount. Or you get it done quick and you get twice as much as you would have.
Yeah. Part of the reason I don't charge hourly is because because it's actually like that's the smaller portion of my rate. Because like most of the projects that I've worked on, it's somewhere between 20 and 40 hours, but like that is only a small chunk. The bigger portion of my rate, like pie, is the licensing, because most of what I am getting paid is for the fact that they are buying out the image altogether. So like that, and that's really where a lot of an artist's commission really comes from, is like how much is the company buying out the image for.
Well, and also consider that you're not just paying for this person's work for this amount of time. You're paying for incredibly skilled labor that they had to work their entire life to be able to do.
Right.
So it's not like you're getting someone to pull weeds from your garden.
Yeah.
Oh no, right now I charge 30 an hour. Like,
Yeah,
like
30
per
hours
do
is
that.
pretty decent baseline, honestly.
Yeah.
But like something that I'm always thinking about is like I have normally charged, like when I'm figuring out my rates, I'm usually running about $20 an hour for that.
Okay.
But the big thing I'm negotiating is often what is my print privileges for the image, because like Fantasy Light, Greater Than Games is going to pay me for the hours and then like what they're going to use it for. But then like anytime I'm printing that image, then I am also making money off of it as well.
Yep.
Because like I've negotiated for that image to be used like in books or like printing at my table. That's something that like I don't think a lot of people are thinking about when they're coming out with their rates when you're charging by hour. So,
We got time for one or two more.
I use 3D modeled art instead of traditional art, so like sketch doesn't really apply. Are there any other differences that you would say apply to 3D modeled art?
Differences?
Are you doing it off of sketches, or like do they provide you with an image and then you model it?
Images, sometimes just description.
Okay. So what I would say if I was working with a modeler is I would want the equivalent of a sketch, which is basically like a crude figure in the pose, to go like, okay, what's the motion of this going to look like?
Like a base wireframe.
Yeah. And then like just see it at different points. The advantage of that is it's easier to change than a lot of things. Like if I go, if this nose isn't right, you can fix the nose. That's...
Yeah, so kind of establish your basic, like you're saying, establish your basic pose. Make sure you're good there with that wireframe.
Right.
And then just make sure that you understand the art prompt. Do you know the period? Do you know what kind of... So
ask any questions you need up front.
Like when we work with our 3D modelers, we either provide them with sketches from all four angles, and so it's a lot easier for them because then they're just recreating that item. But if we go from scratch, then just make sure you've got enough reference material from the get-go. I'll provide like, this is what the shirt would look like, this is what the skirt would look like, this is what kind of hair I'm picturing, that level of... So that you could go in and you're not sitting there modeling curly hair, which takes so much longer when I just wanted like a ponytail. That kind of a thing. So the biggest thing, go for a wireframe and then just make sure you really understand what they want, so that when you put that second layer in of those more finite details, you know what you're doing from the get-go. Yeah.
You briefly mentioned licensing, and I'm sure that is an entire second panel topic in and of itself, but do you have a way, or like a ballpark of the spectrum of how much more the licensing fees could cost? Because that's something I've so far been able to avoid in my freelance art career. I just hang on to all my rights and it's fine. But I would like to be able to license, and I have no idea what ratio to charge for that.
It honestly depends a lot on, the different parts of the industry. Like, for instance, book publishing, it's a lot different than game art in general. It's a tough one because it varies so much, and like it varies from an established artist that's been working 30 years to like someone who's just starting too, and really it depends on like the complexity of the image too. Like if I'm doing a cover piece that I'm going to be perpetually making prints of, I'm going to want to retain more of the licensing rights. So I might give them, like say, if I'm trying to retain more rights, I might say like I'm only going to charge you like $100 for this, and that's not like hard numbers at all. Versus like, oh, they're buying out the whole thing, like so I can't like do prints or anything. I'm going to be charging like say $1,000 then for that.
Yeah.
You should be charging considerably more if you can't use it.
Right, because you're giving up that ability to be able to continue to make those prints of it, to continue to sell it, continue to use it in other ways too. So kind of thinking about, what is that worth to you? How often are you going to do that? That's a tough question.
Yeah. So.
I'm in the world of art licensing, and one thing to bear in mind, if you're 20-something, if you own the rights to that image, you're still be making money off of it when you're 80-something.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly.
So look at it almost as like your investment bank. Because I'm an art director for a jigsaw puzzle company, and I'm still producing images that people painted back in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And I'm paying advances, I'm paying royalties. So do, look at that almost as money in the bank. Drawing small little investments for you all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's, and that's the other thing with your image, when you're evaluating how much that image is worth, when you're doing production copyright, bear in mind how many uses that image would put to it.
Yeah.
So if it's a character that is for that property, well, there's not many uses you can do it. It's their character.
Right.
You can't necessarily
Yeah.
use it on other things. But if it's something like generic, like a kitty cat,
Yeah.
you can put that on gift wrap and bags and napkins
and that's and part of that too is like what you're negotiating in the contract too. There are some great stories of artists that say worked for L5R back in the day, and they did all these samurai images. Well, AEG at the time they had their work for hire contracts have a limit of 15 years. So now you're seeing some guys like Drew Baker not only printing it themselves, but they now have the opportunity to sell the same image off to another company, so that they can, do some kind of print. A lot of times you can't do it to two game companies, but there have been some bold artists that have, but especially with generic RPG art, if you're doing just, Armored Goblin, and this company's probably not going to last very long, sometimes you can then sell it to another company later. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.